Front page of Farmers Weekly this week, the government has signalled that it intends to push ahead with its aim to enable councils to limit the area that can be placed in trees in some parts of the country. Prodded by concerns in the rural sector prior to the election, Agricultural Minister Damien O'Connor has moved on his promise after the election that the government will restrict forestry planting over 50 hectares on land use capability classes 1 to 5. If you tuned in last night, you would have heard our interview with Phil Taylor, President of the Forest Owners Association, who aired his concerns around this. So now we talk to Minister O'Connor. Welcome to Serious Country this evening, Minister. What are the impacts around this particular policy on landowners' property rights was one of the big things that came out of the conversation with Phil, and permitting the activity of forestry. What is the one thing that is driving this particular change for you in this next term?
Well, that was what farmers were asking for, Sarah. And, there were a lot of people protesting and making a lot of noise about, afforestation taking over, destroying the beef, sheep and beef sector. That was a slight overplay, I guess, but we were mindful of the fact in some areas, and Wairoa and the top of the Wairarapa, where we had seen some good farms go into trees, and was concerned about the local jobs and processing of meat in Wairoa, and then, good farmland being lost in the top of the Wairarapa. So there was this issue of the inability of councils to have any say, and so we think it appropriate because it connects back to communities and long-term viability, and of course it was always going to have some impact on so-called property rights, that is, what people or who they can sell to and for what reasons. And so the NES that had been put in place by the previous government had just removed some of that ability for councils. And so we believe we're just getting the balance back right, and we think that there'll be good. There are plenty of places to plant trees and help farmers to have multiple land use, but we don't want to see large scale, buyouts, and most of it's by Kiwis or Kiwi companies. And we want to see a balance in the communities that we have in rural New Zealand, the land use being appropriate. And so we've just stepped in to say that there is now an ability, or there will be, for councils to have a say. It may not change final decisions, but at least the opportunity to scrutinise it will be there.
Phil was really honing in on the economics of land use, and with the way that the ETS and carbon credits are structured, some may call that a subsidy against other forms of land use, and therefore driving that demand. There's all these different levers that are going on. When is market forces correct, and when is government intervention?
Well, the ETS, I guess, was set up back in 2008, and then the incoming national government endorsed it as the best structure around carbon management, trying to reduce our emissions over time. So the ETS has kind of been locked in there. What they did at that time, of course, is they let the door open for what were cheap and credits from Russia and other countries that had no credibility, and so it destroyed the market for carbon. We've shut the door to those foreign credits and now allowing the market, I guess, around carbon to operate properly. And it's been around $25 a tonne, and it can go up to $35. And people are speculating, and they may indeed lose quite a lot of money if they think it's going to go further up. It may not, as technology actually says, and the aircraft industry is a classic one, where in New Zealand we're starting to buy a lot of credits, but they don't need them now. And so, maybe the market around air travel will collapse for carbon credits, and those who may have planted trees hoping to pick up or sell credits at a $50 or $70 market, they may lose money. So, that's the market that's operating. I've always preferred, and I think many farmers do, is to have, if you're going to plant trees, you want to calculate your return based on what the timber's worth, and have a sustainable cycle. But carbon farming is a reality around, the new, quest to reduce emissions over time internationally. Planting trees is an offset. And so that's another factor at play that probably wasn't there 20 years ago.
Now, I want to get to the situation where New Zealand Pork is extremely disappointed with the court ruling on farrowing crates. In 2018, the standards were introduced by yourself after receiving advice from the National Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. Has advice on that welfare practice on our pork farms changed over the last 2 years?
No, it hasn't. And the NAWAC, as you've called the Animal Advisory Committee, is an independent body of astute people who really know about animal welfare, not like myself. And they provide advice and have done to ministers. And you need a very good reason to challenge and unpick that advice, because they usually give it a thorough investigation. And so that advice came through to me. Judges made a ruling. Look, the industry or others may choose to appeal. So it's not appropriate for me to make a comment on that at the moment. That's still, of course, in the legal process.
And of course, something to celebrate. There's a couple of things. Let's start with the biosecurity awards this week. How are you feeling? Are you feeling extremely proud of the efforts that are going in, or are we still a long way off?
Well, it's nice that we have things to celebrate, and we got rid of pea weevil, we got rid of fruit fly, down the track on M. bovis. There is a lot of things that we can celebrate and did the other night because of the hard work of people in biosecurity in New Zealand, working for Osprey, working for MPI. There's a lot of stuff happening, and there were many community organisations and volunteers and others that were acknowledged the other night, and that's great. And one of the people there, Linda Peacock, who got the Minister's Award, is because she's kind of an unsung hero. She's worked behind the scenes, Kiwi Fine Health, on the PSA challenge. And the fact that we've moved on from that and the industry is really thriving is a credit to people like her, and her in particular, really. And so it was nice to acknowledge her and Kiwi Vine Health for what they have done in the face of a disease that could have destroyed the industry, but indeed we moved on with technology and breeding and other plant varieties. So and many other school groups there as well. Great night.
Firstly, congratulations on your portfolio as the Minister of Trade as well, Damien, and certainly something that ties beautifully in with your portfolio of agriculture. I understand from Stephen Jacoby, who we spoke to earlier this week, that the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, you had a lot of work to do with behind the scenes, even before coming into this ministerial position. So how are you feeling about India in particular not being a part of this, and are there some plans to ensure that they will in the future?
As we announced when we signed the deal, we had a declaration, of course, from all other 15 countries that the door was open to India. We all were disappointed that they weren't there, and they'd been working with us in the roughly 3 years that I was involved. Come to the meetings, they participated, and worked through some really thorny issues close to the conclusion. But in the end, Prime Minister Modi decided, for political reasons, that they should withdraw from that, and that's their right to do so. But we declared as 15 other nations that we will keep in contact with India, we'll leave the door open, and if they want to re-engage down the track, which we think would be a great thing, as they expand their export opportunities, particularly in the area of primary industries, they'll be looking for protection and market through the fair rules that we managed to negotiate with effectively a third of the world's population. If India had been on board, it would have been a half of the world's population. Quite a lot of people. Over 50% of our exports go into those markets. And what the deal does is offers certainty, because the rules are there, they will be upheld. And exporters, when you start to develop a product and look for markets, then you'll know what the rules will be. Without those rules, you can have an ad hoc intervention at the border or some way through the supply chain that simply blocks you. And I've spoken to some of the biggest exporters in our country, and without those rules, they're totally at the mercy of the people in the market, because they've put the effort into making the product, they've shipped it over there, and if someone turns around and says, sorry, it's not right, or then there's not much you can do. So, this is great security And that's what we were hoping to achieve.
With the way 30% of the world's population is part of the base of this particular partnership, with all of the time and deliberation and painful staking negotiations with Brexit, and as we slide into the new year and a deadline, I mean, is the UK really going to be a part of our future? Can we pull back and be safe still to grow our exports into other markets, or do we still have to focus hard on what was the foundation and cornerstone of New Zealand's economy right back in the early 1900s?
Well, obviously the percentage of products that go to the EU and UK, had diminished over time, and then if you split the markets, it's even less. But the high value markets, we've got traditions and connections, and New Zealand lamb in the UK has been well known for century plus. But we need to actually keep those doors open and open doors to brand new markets all the time. We can't afford as a trading nation to turn our back on any opportunity. Some of those people are most discerning. They do appreciate the fine quality food. They have to pay a bit more for it because we have to ship it to them. But those are the kinds of opportunities. And there are new opportunities every single day for people with innovative products. And it might be boneless lamb. It was always, roasts. And we've come up with some great products, lamb racks. Been a pretty hard time because restaurants have closed. So, the meat industry's done a great job to shift its production into products that, you can sell online that are more ready to be cooked in home. And so, exciting opportunity, worth the effort, but it will be hard work over the next couple of years.
Talking about high value product, that's certainly worth it, is a couple of themes within Sarah's Country tonight. Minister, we have Mayor Tim Cadogan, who's just been on the show speaking about cherries rotting on the ground in central Otago. Nikki Johnson will be joining us very shortly. The same situation happening in the kiwi fruit industry. This is an ongoing conversation. So my question is actually very light-hearted to you as we talk about celebrating fruit and fruit desserts. Have you got a sweet tooth for a particular type of fruit that we do so well here in New Zealand?
I do. I love desserts, and I have to say that boysenberry pavlovas, the boysenberry, and we grew some, but it's just got that slight tart taste that's offset some of the sugar in the rest of the dessert. And so, it's a perfect combination in my view, and I could eat it every night.
There you go. If you want to get to Minister O'Connor's heart, take him some boysenberries with some pavlova.
This is Sarah's Country.